Hello and welcome. Today we are going to be looking at the first type of a requirement determination technique, which in this case is an interview. Interviews is the most commonly used requirement determination technique or recitation technique. We can conduct interviews either one-to-one person, or you can have multiple people being interviewed at the same time. How do we conduct interviews? There are 5 steps that are normally followed whenever we are conducting an interview. Remember, you want to gain requirements from the users, and you want to use interviews as the requirement determination technique to be able to get those particular requirements. So the first thing that you need to ask yourselves is, who is going to be the interviewee? Who am I going to interview? So in the event we are still dealing with that particular project on how do we eliminate stockouts or inventory stockouts, we need to ask ourselves, who are we going to interview? We next need to design the interview questions. Next, we need to prepare for the interview. And then we go and conduct the interview. And after that, we normally do what we refer to as a post-interview follow-up. In selecting interviewees, you need to develop something referred to as an interview schedule. The interview schedule details who is going to be interviewed, what will be the purpose of the interview, where will the interview be taking place, and when will it take place. The selection of the interviewees is normally done on the basis of analyst information needs. You can decide to either begin from the top management all the way to the lower cadre staff, which we refer to as a top-down approach, or you can begin with the staff at the lower cadre going upwards to the staff at the top management. Although we are going to say that the best approach is when you have a top-down, so that you have a strategic view of the system. For instance, you can see that in this given case, we have begun with the top-down approach by first of all interviewing the director so that we're able to get the strategic view of the information system. Then we equally interview the manager. You can see we have stated the name of the person, the position they hold, what will be the purpose of that particular interview, as well as when will it take place. And in this particular case, you can see that we would want to know the problems with account receivable. We'll also speak to the manager accounts payable. We'll also speak to the supervisor, the data entry, as well as the data entry clerk. After that, you design the interview questions. And we normally have 3 types of interview questions. It can either be close-ended questions, or open-ended questions, or probing questions. Close-ended questions demand a specific answer. So these more or less like multiple choice or arithmetic questions within an exam, or what we refer to as the Likert scale type of questions. Maybe questions that you ask users to explain to what extent they agree to a particular statement. So they are able to choose strongly agree, strongly disagree, and so on and so forth. The other type is what we're referring to as open-ended questions, which in this given case you leave some room for elaboration on the part of the interviewee. And then we have the probing questions, which is normally used to seek more details when you as an interviewer are unclear about an answer the interviewee has provided to you. Examples of close-ended questions, for example, is how many telephone orders do you receive per day? We want to investigate the reasons as to why we have the inventory stockout. So we may want to know how many telephone orders are received per day. In this given case, you can see we are expecting a specific answer. How do customers place orders? You are expecting a specific answer. What information is missing from the monthly sales report? you're expecting some specific answer. Now, open-ended questions leave room for elaboration. For example, what do you think about the way invoices are processed? Maybe someone might talk about that maybe they are time-consuming, or maybe they have very many approval steps, and so on and so forth. You may ask, what are some of the problems that you face on a daily basis? What are some of the improvements you'd like to see in the way invoices are processed, and so on and so forth. Now, probing questions is, for instance, you may have asked a user to explain maybe how many telephone orders are received per day. And then maybe the person might tell you 1,000. And you may ask why. You may want to know why that high number. And you may seek an explanation. Or sometimes a question might be given, for example, what are some of the problems that you face? And then you might qualify by probing the given interviewee to provide an example that brought about maybe that particular problem. Or sometimes you might even tell them to be more detailed. For example, they might say that the invoice generation is time consuming. So you may want to probe more. What does it, or what makes it to be more time consuming, and so on and so forth. Now, in terms of organizing the interviews, we said you can either have a top-down approach where you begin from the management all the way downwards, or you can begin from the bottom-up approach where you begin with the very specific all the way to the very general. After that, you prepare for the interview. In this given case, you need to have an interview plan, which has the questions that you anticipate to ask, which are the expected responses that you anticipate, as well as how you'll follow up on them. It's always a good thing to inform your interviewee the reason as to why you want to interview them, the areas that you are going to be discussing with them, so that they are equally able to prepare in advance. While conducting the interview, the first goal you need to do, remember we said, is that you need to build a rapport with the interviewee. And this is of course done through your introduction. So you need to build a rapport, you need to have the interviewee know that they can trust you, they are willing to share with you, and they are, of course, willing to tell you the truth. The next thing is that you need to be professional. You need to be unbiased, and you need to be independent seeker of information. Don't end up telling the interviewee that he or she is lying to you. So all throughout the interview, take note, be professional. The next thing is that you need to begin with an explanation. Let the interviewee know, why are you there? Why have you chosen to interview them? Before you go into your planned interview questions. As you conduct your interview, always write down what the interviewee says. Sometimes you may find that whatever they are saying may fail to be relevant as a then, but when you later look at your notes, you may realize that it was critical, whatever they told you about. Once the interview is over, of course, you need to thank the interviewee for their time and for according you that particular rich information. After that, you need to go and sit down, and from those particular interview notes, you need to prepare what is referred to as an interview report, which describes the information that was derived from that particular interview. And of course, the information needs to be organized in a useful format. This is just but an example of an interview guide, which was geared towards interviewing the accounts receivable manager. And you can see it has been organized. Whom am I going to interview? When am I going to interview? What will be the time? Where? What will we be discussing about? And then the time allocated. Remember, we said that we should always be time conscious. So you can see in this given case, it's around 14 minutes, the total duration that this interview is supposed to take. And so we have distributed the questions in those particular 14 minutes. So you can see that we have indicated we are going to have some introduction. We want to thank the interview for their time. We will explain why the purpose that we are there in around 1 or 2 minutes. And then you ask the first questions, because we want to know about the credit checking policy. What determines whether we can offer a customer credit or not? So you may ask this question: what conditions determine whether a customer order is approved for credit? And they may give the different conditions that are checked. Maybe, for example, whether a customer has a previous credit, maybe their repayment history, and so on and so forth. And then you may do a follow-up depending on the clarifications that you may need. The second question, you may ask what possible decisions or actions might be taken once these conditions have been evaluated. And maybe you might be told we can either approve the credit, we may decline the credit, or we may review the credit, maybe request the customer to take a lower credit, and so on and so forth. And you might seek maybe follow-up just to know maybe up to what point can you request the customer to review the credit, and so on and so forth. And then you have another question, number 3, where you're asking how are customers notified when the credit is not approved for their order. You may want to know, do they receive an email? Do they get a text message? Are they called? Do they have to physically come and check? Is a letter posted to them? And so on and so forth. So through such an interview guide, it helps you to know the information that you need to collect from the interviewee, and equally helps you to be specific to the point. Thank you for watching, and I look forward to seeing you in the next